Hello, my name is Paul Priestley. Welcome to Art Tutors Online. Today, this is the fourth in my series of drawing videos for absolute beginners. Today, we're going to combine all the ideas from the previous videos into this one to produce a final drawing. We're going to be concentrating on depth, on curves, and on creating lines and tone. So, let's make a start. Come on. We're going to be using three pencils, HB, 2B, 8B. If you haven't got these pencils, as long as you've got three different pencils, it will work. So don't fret about it. Now we're going to concentrate on what we did in the last few videos, drawing curves, moving the wrist, flicking, creating tone by varying the pressure that you put on with the pencil. You see, as I've done here. So we're going to combine these three ideas together to create our still life. Now the first thing we're going to do is to create a little pot. Now you'll notice when I draw the pot, I'm drawing the top part of the pot curved upwards. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I want to make it look as though I'm looking up at the pot. Now this means you need to understand something about eye level. If you don't understand anything about eye level, check out the little video. You can see the link to it comes up at the top of the screen now. I've drawn three straight lines. These are going to be for my brushes. Now this is not a particularly interesting design, but I want to draw them like this to show you the difference that we will get in the drawing. So you will do a more interesting overlap them. They'll look more interesting if you did that. Now, I'm going to draw basically a decorator's brush. Now, using that center line is really important because I can use that to try to ensure that both sides of my brush are more or less equal. Okay, don't be too precise about it. You know, it doesn't have to look like a photograph, but it does have to be reasonably correct, otherwise it won't work. Now you'll notice the curves are again curving upwards so that I'm beginning to look up at my brush, which is what I want. Now drawing the hairs of the brush, I'm going to just use a broken line. We've used this before along the top to suggest the brush. If you use a continuous line, it doesn't work quite so well. Now I'm going to draw the other brush. This is going to be more like a watercolor type brush here. You see I'm using the curves. Notice how my hand and wrist keeps changing. You know, you must move your hand around if you're going to draw anything. I'm using the center line, as you can see, and I'm flicking to create the hairs on the brush at the top, just suggesting it at the moment. Now all this is with my HB pencil, and I'm drawing it quite lightly because if I make a mistake, I can always correct it at this stage. You should always try to do that, you know, correct it at this stage. It's much easier to correct it now than it is later on when all the tone and details on. Okay, we get the rest of this brush done. Again, I'm flicking upwards and using the broken line to suggest the end. It's more of a flat type brush here. Okay, put the background in, and I'm now going to use my HB pencil and add some tone. Now I'm adding tone by using line. Now we've done this in previous videos, as you can see, using the line to suggest the tone, as you can see here. You'll notice also that as I'm doing this, I keep going over sections just to darken them slightly. This brush is the furthest away of the three. Now, even though when you look at it in reality, there doesn't appear to be very much difference between them. In the drawing, if you make the one at the back slightly lighter in tone, it will look as though it's behind the other brushes. This is why we've got the three brushes separate and not overlapping, just to make this crystal clear. I'm just adding a little bit more tone to this now, as you can see, a few lines here and there, making the brush look a little bit more three-dimensional, but you get the impression I'm looking up at the brush. The brush bristles on the brush, again I'm using that flicking line going up and down, up and down. Don't be too precise, don't go right to the edge there. Remember, you are suggesting a brush. You are not trying to create a photograph of a brush. Okay? People do get obsessed with making their drawings look like hyper-realist photographic drawings, but then they look like everybody else's hyper-realist photographic drawings. No character, you see? No individuality. So if it's not perfect, it's wonderful. It's your drawing. Be proud of it. So we've got to finish off this little sketch here. Now, because I'm doing this in an HB pencil, it's coming out very lightly, and I may well come back to this towards the end of the drawing and adjust the tones. You should always draw and adjust as you go along. Keep comparing and contrasting. I'm now using my 2B pencil, using the curves again. Now you'll notice with this that as soon as I start drawing this, I'm starting putting in the lines. Because I'm using a darker pencil, it's a stronger tone, it already looks as though it's in front of the brush that I've already drawn. You see, so just by using a different strength of pencil, a darker pencil, you can see the difference. I'm using line down here. You'll notice those lines. There's a subtle change, if you notice. It goes from being curved at the edge to being straight in the middle. And that will help to suggest the roundness of that part of the brush. Now, that part of the brush, that curved bit, is actually called the shoulder. I don't know whether you know that, but it is. Using the flicking technique to get the brush, do you see? Flick up, flick, 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 flick. That's what you've got to do. Add a little bit of shading here. Don't be too precise with that. If you try and draw the brush coming back the other way instead of flicking upwards, it doesn't look the same. You see, there's a bit more vigour to it when you flick upwards. So we'll just add a little bit more tone to this. We'll come back and adjust this later on. I'm going to do the same now around the edges of the pot. I'm just outlining this. You see, I'm just darkening the tones around the edge. Now I'm using a 2B pencil for this. I'm not doing the bit in the middle because that's going to be even stronger because it's slightly closer to us. So I'll use my darker pencil. Notice here the curves. I want to suggest that the rim is curved, so I use curved lines. If you use straight lines, the lines will tell us that the rim is straight. We don't want to do that. Lines tell stories. You see here, the lines are vertical. I'm just going up and down like we've done before in the previous videos. And this tells me that the surface is vertical. You see, lines tell a story. So the angle of the lines is really important. Notice here the lines I'm pressing on very, very much lighter because this is going to be the light side of the pot. You see how it's working there? Right, I'm now switching to my 8B pencil. Now, you may choose to use something like a 4B, which probably would be better because it's not quite so much of a contrast. My 8B pencil is really going to contrast with what I've already drawn, which will make things really stand out, which is what I want you to notice. Now you'll notice here, I'm just putting the shading on down the sides there we go. Okay, and you'll notice this, because it's an 8B pencil, is very, very much darker than the other two pencils. So again, it's looking as though it's in front of the other pencils. Now we're just going to put the basics in, again that flicked broken line, flick, flick, flick for the hairs of the brush, you see, flick, flick, flick. This is a big sort of flat type brush there, and we'll just put a little bit more shading on here. We're going to come back and adjust the edges of these brushes later because we've just got the basics in there at the moment. Now, continuing with my 8B pencil, I'm just doing the curves. Now, watch those curves. You see how they become straight in the middle? Okay. I'm pressing on quite hard now, and then gradually I'll stop pressing and press lighter and lighter and lighter. You see the idea? Okay, you can vary all the tones. You can do a whole of this drawing, in fact, just using one pencil, providing that you vary the tone. Now, we've got some strong outlines on this, which we need to get rid of later on, but you'll see how that develops. I'm just going to strengthen some of this area here. As you can see, this is working now quite nicely. So up and down with the darker pencil. Put a little bit of shadow on here just to suggest the 3D elements. Now the background, I'm just going back to my HB pencil and I'm using exactly the same technique I used in the previous video when I drew water. You see lines close together in the background, getting wider apart as they come towards you. Helps to create distance. Now, going back to my HB pencil, just touching up some areas around here, and I'm going to just work a little bit more on the brush in the background to make it slightly stronger in tone. You see, I'm comparing and contrasting. See, the contrast between this brush and the darker brush is a little bit too much at the moment, so I need to darken that, but I'll come back to that later. Now, I'm switching to my 2B pencil and I'm just adding some shading over the top of this to make the contrast a little bit more subtle. You see the idea? So just darkening this down a little bit now, so we've got a little bit more subtle contrast between the two. Now you'll see here I want to get rid of some of these outlines, so the shading is beginning to develop so that the outline begins to disappear. We want to try to get rid of outlines if we possibly can, because your drawing will look more realistic if you can get rid of outlines. Now, I'm going to use my HB pencil again, just darken this down a little bit more. You see here, just as it goes into the pot, because you're going to get a lot of shadow in that area just there. So I'm going to try to darken it a little bit more. You see what I'm doing? I'm going to do the same here, this is with my 2B pencil. Now you see this section here, I'm just darkening it just as it reaches the pot, and it creates now an edge. The pot has got an edge there, not an outline, and that looks more convincing. It makes that brush look as though it's actually gone into the pot, which is what we want to see. We're going to look at this side now. I need to make some adjustments on this, but we're going to use my 8B pencil. As I say, you can probably use a lighter pencil, but I'm doing this so you can see clearly the contrast between the different pencils. You'll notice again I've darkened a little bit where it touches the pot itself, so it creates an outline. Okay, it creates an edge, not an outline. Darkening this area by the bristles, you see, makes the bristles look much more commanding, much more dominant. I'm just going to strengthen the shadow down this side here with my 8B pencil. You can see here, just going down there, strengthening it up. You see, one little tip, if you screw your eyes up now, screw your eyes up and look at the drawing, you can see it in terms of light and dark. So you can then see which bits need to be made lighter, or which bits need to be made darker to work. Now you'll notice my middle brush is a little bit too light still, so I'm going to darken it, add a little bit more tone to it. I'm also going to adjust this brush because the side of this brush isn't quite there yet. So I'll just make adjustments to that. So you've got to keep looking now, looking carefully, make these sort of minor adjustments. Major adjustments should have been made earlier on, but minor adjustments like tone and such like here, just darkening these edges at the bottom there so it creates that edge. You see, I'm just bringing that out a little bit because it needs to be a little bit fatter on the shoulder of the brush there. That's better. Okay, make that look a little bit more curved. Now, we'll just touch up a little bit more about the bottom of that center brush in a second as well, because that just needs to be strengthened. This one again needs to be strengthened here. Just keep looking, comparing, contrasting all the time, just touching up little sections, making it look that little bit more convincing. That's what you're trying to do. I'll just do a little bit more, as you can see on this brush. This is with a 2B pencil. Now just making that, strengthening that tone there and these edges just to make them look a little bit more convincing. Now you can clearly see that brushes look as though they're in front of each other. This is done by contrast of tone. This is what you need to do in your drawing. I've exaggerated the effect here, but you can see what I'm trying to do. I hope you've done a great drawing. Good luck with the drawing. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching Art Tutorials Online. I hope you've really enjoyed the video and learnt lots. If you have, perhaps you could give the video a like. If you would like to subscribe, then check out my YouTube channel, which you can see on the bottom of the screen here. If you would like to support the making of these videos, then please have a look at my Patreon channel, where you can get lots of interesting rewards in return for your patronage. That would be wonderful. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!